So, ladies and gentlemen, it is here, the latest movie from director Christopher Nolan, who is a name that needs no introduction here. Anyone over the age of 12 has at least seen one Nolan film at this point in their short and uneventful life, and whenever he releases a film, it becomes a cultural phenomenon. So whenever that's said, you'd expect this film to be a slam dunk, right? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. So before we go into the review, I just want to be upfront by saying that I've not really been the biggest fan of Christopher Nolan's films in the last few years. Dunkirk just didn't really do it for me, and Tenet was a bit of a mess. So when I heard he was doing a biopic about Oppenheimer based on the book American Prometheus, I was cautiously optimistic. My problem with Tenet was that it was a convoluted and bloated mess, so to see him tackle a film that's quite small in scale was nice to see. On the other hand though, the last few years I have been excited for films which ultimately disappoint me. And it's a shame to say this, but in the lead up to the film's release, I was even distrusting this film in terms of whether it delivered or not. It's insane to say that, but in a world where most big releases are either half-baked concepts, poorly paced Frankenstein-like monstrosities, films that drop the ball with its third act, or God forbid, a film riddled with the bullet holes of preachy and disingenuous woke messaging. Now, I know Nolan would never let his film fall into any of those categories. Even Tenet, which I dislike, is still clearly his vision. But I also didn't expect Velma to be as shit as it was, so crazier things have happened. But I am pleased to report that Oppenheimer is a very strong entry into the Christopher Nolan filmography. It's not my favourite Nolan movie, that right belongs to the Prestige, but it is still a pretty damn good movie with a few flaws, but none of the flaws I normally have with Nolan films. The greatest bit of praise I can throw this film's way is that it is very easy to follow along. Nolan movies have a tendency to allow his films to wallow in their convoluted nature. Tenet is the biggest example of this. A film that was basically devoured by its concept, so to see a film that's both coherent and easy to follow is a welcome change. The film also has a very strong cast. It's stacked, so I won't mention everyone's names, or this video will go over the 10-minute mark. But the standouts for me are Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr, Emily Blunt, and of course, Cillian Murphy. Matt Damon plays Leslie Groves incredibly well, and out of all the characters in this film, I think he was the one that captured my attention at all times. Perhaps even more than Cillian Murphy, who's doing a phenomenal performance as Oppenheimer himself. Emily Blunt is one of my favourite actresses in the business right now. She's amazing in Sicario and Edge of Tomorrow, so to see her in this film is a blast. And of course, Robert Downey Jr. Given that I've been watching him as Iron Man for a little over a decade, I wasn't expecting to see him play this kind of character after the MCU. I was expecting him to stick to more safe roles like Doolittle. But I think he nailed it here. He plays the character of Louis Strauss within the film, and it's a very different role to that of Tony Stark. I'll be interested to see if he takes more serious roles like this in the future. Anyway, enough of me gushing about how good the performances are. What about the visuals? Christopher Nolan has given us some striking visuals in his time. Even his weaker films have good visuals, so how are they on this? Well, the answer to that, my friend, is top fucking notch. That's how good the visuals are. This film is full of memorable shots and sequences. As for my favourite shot of the film, well, beside Florence Pugh in a certain scene where she's holding a book, it's definitely the shot of Oppenheimer looking at the bomb tower of the car in shot, the one that's in the trailers. It's just that visual really sticks in my mind, and I don't know why. It's a very simple shot, but it's the one that I really took away from the film, even above the explosion and the nuke. The other shot that really stuck with me was Kitty by the washing line, which is Oppenheimer's wife, and again, it's a shot that's not really anything spectacular, but for whatever reason, it's just one that's stuck in my mind. Both these shots just work for me. And I've got to gush about the thermonuclear-sized elephant in the room. I'm talking about the Trinity test. This is the sequence that we've been seeing marketed in the trailers for like over a year now, and it's the most tense moment in a film I've seen in a while. And that's saying something for a scene where we all know the outcome of anyway. Obviously because the human race exists today, but it's just as powerful as it would have been if I never knew. The whole film had been building up to this moment and the stakes are set, and it's just such a tense moment. By the end of it, it just sort of felt quite bittersweet about the whole thing. It's a bittersweet relief. My mind sort of went to a film called Threads, which is capable of giving anyone a permanent fear of the world ending via nuclear war, so if you ever have that effect on me, then I think you've done a pretty good job. Despite the film having plenty to love, there is something I'm a bit mixed on. Throughout the film, we are given sections of a hearing that takes place after the bomb goes off, and it's the last act of the film. And it's essentially just all these hearings, and at this point the pace just drops dramatically. Up until that point, the film had a very brisk and efficient pace, but once you get to the last act of the film, the pace just drops. Don't get me wrong, the scenes are all great, but I think it would have been better if they trimmed a few of them down or removed a couple of them. A lot of it is repeating what we already know from watching the film as well, and with a film like this, you'd expect to trust the audience to put two and two together, but the end does have to spell it out for you. And it's hardly a deal breaker, and to be honest, maybe on a second viewing I will not have that issue. As for the negatives, the only one I really have is that there are far too many characters in this film to keep track of. Especially all the scientists, it just gets very overwhelming after a while. This film is mostly told from the perspective of Oppenheimer, which I think makes the film a lot more personal and compelling. But you have all these characters at Los Alamos who are starting to just blend into one collective hive mind after a while. If you asked me the name of Jack Quaid's character in this film, I'd probably just give you a confused look and say Huey and Richie as a defense mechanism. Also, I've touched on this already, and I'm quite vocal about it nowadays, but this film is 3 hours long, and that's a tall ask for any film, and this is no different. I think this is a film that's a little too long. Unlike No Time to Die, which is a similar runtime, No Time to Die felt very bloated, messy, and incoherent. This film was able to hold the pace well enough that I'm not checking my watch the entire time, but it is noticeable as you get near the last half of the film. And the question I keep asking myself is, did this film need to be 3 hours long? And to be honest, I don't think it needed to be 3 hours. But anyway, Oppenheimer is a pretty damn good movie that's just a bit too long and has more characters than I have socks given as Christmas presents. If you've seen Oppenheimer already, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Just be civil about it, or I'll have to shove a cactus up your arse and make you walk to the shop to buy me snacks as punishment. Anyway, I've been the Little Highwayman. Thank you for watching my review, and I hereby give you permission to leave. Bye bye.